Hi, how you doing? And welcome back to another video from Average FPL. So with the season just round the corner, I thought I'd make a few prediction videos. Didn't do them last season and thought by the end of the season, it'd be good to look back and just see, how good I was at predicting what could happen throughout the season. So what we've got today is a top 10, and it's my prediction of the top 10 fantasy Premier League scorers, point scorers. So not goal scorers, but point scorers. Which players will get the most points throughout the season? Now, obviously, part of fantasy league is getting on players in your team before they get on hot streaks, because players, they don't score consistently all throughout the season. Some do, but a lot of the times players go through sort of hot streaks where they'll have a run of, a few games, and or they're on blistering form. And that's why we sort of tinker as we go and we make certain changes to our teams. But at the end of it all, these are the 10 players I think will score the most points. So, without waffling too much, if you like the video, please like and subscribe to the channel. Any support is greatly appreciated. And at number 10, we have Reece James. So, not had lots of experience in terms of point scoring seasons, but if you look at the trajectory of his points since 2019 2020, they have consistently increased. Now, players like Azpilicueta, who were challenging him for that right back slot, you know, they're sort of getting a bit older. Chelsea are moving into a bit of a transition stage, I think, in defence because they've, Rudiger's moved on. Thiago Silva's a little bit older. Players like Alonso looking at moving away as well. And I think Reece James is probably going to get the most minutes he's ever had. You look at the points he scored last season, but you're looking at 500 fewer minutes than 2021-22. Sorry, 2020-2021. So with fewer minutes, he's got, almost 20 more points than he did the previous season. So you think if you merge those two stats together and he gets those extra minutes, then the points are surely going to increase as well. So at 6 million, I mean, he's very highly owned, and I think that's for good reason. 6 million, I would suggest getting him in your team. So the next one we've got is probably no surprise. So in this video, there'll be some absolute dead certs and a couple of wild cards, as it were. This is probably one of the dead certs. So we've got Trent. So consistently scoring around 200 points the last 4 seasons. There's no reason as to why he shouldn't score points. Is he the best value? If you're comparing him with midfielders, he's absolutely great value. If you're comparing him with defenders, especially this year, you can probably recreate these points with 4.5 million defenders, and that then enables you to get in some big hitter midfielders. Pound for pound in terms of the game, very good value. 7.5 million, over half the current players own him, and a lot of that is for fear of missing out. I remember at times last season, Trent he would go through stages where he wouldn't really score that much, and then would get score points in bunches. So if he can just get a bit more consistent, I think he could have a really good season. I wouldn't necessarily expect him to score more than 210, 220, but even still, that's a great return for a 7.5 million player. Next, we have João Cancelo. Now, last season was really a breakout season, and he started playing more consistently. I don't see why that wouldn't continue. I mean, look at the minutes increase from 2021 to 22 season. There, almost 1,000 more minutes. So I really think that last season's benchmark, 200 points, is something which I would expect Cancelo to hit again. And he's a little bit cheaper than Trent. I would say if you're struggling for funds and you had to choose between João Cancelo and Trent, I would just go with Cancelo for that extra zero point 0.5 million you save. Man City's defense is a little bit, more consistently attacking, I would say. Well, Cancelo, for instance, is always further up the pitch, and that assist rate increase really showed last season. So coming in at number 7, I believe, is Bruno Fernandez. So Bit of a wild card, this one. Obviously, didn't perform as well as he would have liked last season, but then neither did Man United as a whole. So his success, in my opinion, really depends on whether Man United can get that act together. And it kind of has to be now or never for them. I think looking at Bruno's stats, when he is on form and when United are on form, I mean, look at that season in 2020, 2021. Um, his minutes are pretty much identical from season to season in the last 2 years, but that point difference is almost 100 points difference. So we know he's got the potential to score lots of points. Really low percent owned. Could be a player that bursts out of the gates early on. Man United are running out of excuses as to why they're so poor until it turns around on the players. So I don't think they can go through another manager. I know we've sort of said it before, but I do think the players will start kicking into gear, and I think he's really one to watch for the start of the season. Next, we've got Raheem Sterling, still in his Man City kit on the picture, but that move to Chelsea, I said in a previous video, I really think he's going to be the main guy. I don't think he'd move to another team, that's typically less successful recently than Man City, apart from Champions League, and be just the same role as he was on Man City. Otherwise, he might as well have just stayed there. Again, another £10 million player. Again, low owned. I think he could have a real breakout season. You've got the World Cup coming in December. So I really think that, initially at the start of the season, he's going to want to make his mark. And I think that's going to carry on. How the World Cup affects players is to be seen. But I do think initially in the first part of the season, he could be a really big point scorer. And he's shown recently in the last 5 years that he can break those 200-point marks. We're just talking about players, 200 points. That's a great return. But look at that, a couple of seasons from Sterling, 229 and 234 points. And his minutes dropped off last season. But I think, you can expect to him to get that late 2000s minutes playing for Chelsea. Up next, Gabriel Jesus. Now, a bit of a wild card, but I am really favouring Jesus this season. And look at that percentage owned, 63.6%. He hasn't got the track record in terms of point scoring, but his points per minute are looking really good. He's been playing like 1,000 minutes less than Raheem Sterling. Um, more than that if you compare him to Bruno Fernandez. So I think Jesus, if he gets those minutes, I'm so interested to see how his points rack up and if he can get those goals. I really think he is, he could be the signing of the season, but for the whole Premier League, if he gets those minutes, he's shown he can score. Let's see if those points can translate into more minutes, and he maintains that consistency. Up next is his teammate, Bukayo Saka. Now, we talked about Reece James's points increase as seasons went on in at the beginning of the video, and I must say, look at the same thing for Saka. That is such a huge leap season to season. He's getting lots of minutes. I know, like we look at Arsenal, we say, oh, they like to rotate, especially in midfield. But Saka is getting pretty much 3,000 minutes there, and now that is top in terms of minutes among Premier League outfield players. So I would suggest, that when he's a young player, again, wants to get in the World Cup team for England. As he gets that more experience, I really think those returns are going to keep going. Arsenal now have a bit more of a focal point in their attack with Jesus, and they're going to go for it. Anything less than top four is failure for Arsenal this season. And I'm looking at his rank amongst midfielders. He is a huge threat, especially at 8 million. That points per million is off the charts. I would really rate getting him in your team this season. Up next, Erling Haaland, hugely percentage wise owned, not proven, so I've had to put his fixtures on here as he's got no previous data. Now, the only thing we're looking at is his injury record. If he is healthy and playing, he could well be top goal scorer in the Premier League this season. It's whether you want to take that chance early on. Um, Obviously, fear of missing out is a big negative here. with him being so highly owned. But I've said in previous videos, these players that transfer to England from abroad, you think they're just going to hit the ground running. Now, if anyone can, it's Haaland, but they do need that settling down time. And you know, I am leaning towards seeing how it goes at the start of the season, but I do think he is too good not to be on this list. I think his points will definitely rack up as the season goes on. So I think we're in the top three. In a third place, I think it's Kevin De Bruyne, consistently scoring points. Apart from that injury hit season, you can pretty much guarantee him to get, give or take, around 200 points. Um, the one difference with Man City now is Haaland in attack. I think also now they've got a few less players moved on. Jesus, Sterling, um, Ferran Torres in January. I think they're going to start rotating possibly a bit less, especially for someone like Kevin De Bruyne. His points have only decreased when his minutes have decreased. When he's getting that, top 2,000 minutes, he's pretty much at 200 points a season. Obviously top tier in terms of cost, but I think he's worth it. Now Man City have got that focal point to attack that will finish the chances. He'll be creating it all. Get him in your team. Number two, my prediction for the second most points this season is Son. I just think he was on fire last season under Conte, and Kane is missing from this list because a lot of the time last season I had Kane in my team, but he ended up sort of being the link-up player for Son. So Kane would receive the ball, Son would run on and finish the chances, whereas you would be hoping Kane would be in and around the box. Now, I kept kidding myself thinking, well, Kane will score sooner or later, but really what happened was Son just kept finding the back of the net. 23 goals, I think he was joint top goal scorer, and now he's got a full season under Conte, full pre-season as well. I just think he is just so obvious to own, and the fact that he is so low owned. When you look at someone like Haaland, everyone's taking a big risk on Haaland. Son is 0.5 million more, and you know what you're getting, like it's guaranteed points. So whilst I would say Haaland is a great option, I can't believe that only a quarter of people are owning Son. I think that's going to shoot up after the first few game weeks. No surprises here. Number one is Mo Salah, scoring as many points as he did last season, joint top scorer with Son. Look at those assists as well. Still in midfield. I just think now Mane is out of the way. Liverpool have got a young attack and they're going to defer to Salah. He's now top dog in that attack. There is nobody really that's challenging him, for things like penalties or taking chances off him. They are going to look for Salah, these younger players. And, look at that point scoring over the last 5 seasons. There's nobody better. 56.6% owned. I completely agree with half the people there. I mean, you look at that highly percent owned with all, things with all these players. There's still just as many people pretty much without him than with him, which is staggering, really. People taking a risk on other players. Um, but I just think, I've taken risks before in my team with these newly transferred players in, or people that you think have huge upside. But ultimately, you can't beat players that have been there and done it before. And Mo Salah, he's top dog when it comes to things like that. And I just can't see a reason why you shouldn't have him in your team. So that concludes this list. Let me know what you think. That is in order. So it's from 10 to first. I really think that could be the order. And these players at the top of the list are the players that you should be looking at getting in your teams. But have I missed anyone out? I know I mentioned Kane. Would there be any surprise players that you think could crack the top 10 list? And is there any massive mistakes you think I've made? Feel free to let me know. Thank you very much for listening, and I will see you in the next one.